Hi, I'm Don Moores, and welcome to Montgomery Week in Review. Teacher shortages are becoming common in large districts around the country. It's also a problem here in Montgomery County as it is across the nation. Shirley Brandman, who comments for this here show on a regular basis, is here to discuss what school districts like Montgomery County are trying to do to alleviate this teacher shortage. We might ask her a couple questions about this upcoming election as well. Every election cycle, like the one we're in right now, the League of Women Voters of Maryland works to meet the needs of residents across the state in the hopes that all of them will go to the voting booths and that they will know exactly who they're voting for and why. Ralph Watkins from the State Board is here to tell us all that the League does. Maybe not all, but a lot. Office of Community Partnerships, established by our county executive, the great Ike Leggett, creates programs that reach out to the diverse populations in our county. The office is now working on an initiative with the League of Women Voters of Montgomery County dealing with voting issues. Diane Vu, the Asian Liaison and Language Access Coordinator, is here to explain her job, the initiative, and so much more. Every Mind has an extensive program that caters to the youth in Montgomery County, from elementary school through high school. Diana Barney, the Director of Counseling for Youth, will tell us about her responsibilities, trends that she sees for the future, and how all of us in this community benefit if we can help our young people. Shirley, welcome back.
Thanks, Don.
It's always a pleasure.
My pleasure.
So, esteemed former member of the Board of Education, you are an expert nationally recognized on education issues. And today, as we see the unemployment rates go down, one of those organizations around the country, or one of those professions suffering, teaching.
Teachers, right?
What's going on?
Well, it's interesting because one of the things we know is that the teaching programs, so post-secondary programs, don't turn out enough teachers to meet demand. So for example, even in Maryland, a lot of our school districts go outside to try to hire. And it's something—
I believe those outside jurisdictions call it poaching.
Yes, they do. They call it poaching. But so I think the question is what's going on and what can we do about it? One of the things, just thinking way back historically, is that there was a time in our country when for women, for minorities, teaching used to be one of the only professions with their doors open. Now there's a lot of competition. And there's a lot of competition because also in some jurisdictions, teacher salaries can't compete. So if I have a degree in the sciences, I might be wooed by the science industry at a salary that's much higher than teaching.
You know, it was very interesting, about 18 years ago, 17 years ago, whatever, 16 years ago, when the No Child Left Behind program came. One of the big shortages, one of the big issues was we didn't have enough certified teachers. And so we had to look outside our borders. A lot of Filipino teachers came in and basically saved a lot of school systems, the DC school system, Baltimore City, and all that stuff. But then as it went on and the recession hit, and so jobs, a lot of people came back to teaching, which then said, okay,
but also a lot of teachers were laid off.
Teachers laid off, but then coming in, and then so we didn't have such a huge thing. Now the economy goes on, and we're having this sort of trail behind.
No, I think that's right, and it's interesting to think about the push and pull. That on the one hand, as the economy is healthier, there are more options. There also are more teachers going back into the pipeline, but not quite to meet the demand because we created a bigger hole during the recession as we laid people off. So I think it's really interesting for us to understand that, number one, we need to promote again the honor and the professionalism of teaching to try to encourage young people to get into the profession. We need to also think about alternative certification paths. So people who've had wonderful careers, but who want to give back, who realize the power of teaching to change lives, have an easier access and easier opportunities to do that.
So long as they get some education about how to teach.
Absolutely.
Because teaching
it's not
is
an
the hardest profession there is.
For sure. It is a real profession. We can't just assume that anybody can walk into a classroom and do it well.
So are needs greater in some areas than others?
Absolutely. I think there are definitely greater needs in jurisdictions, number one, where they have a higher teacher turnover. And that's often where the conditions for teachers are harder, where teachers don't have a lot of support, where the challenges coming into the classroom that kids are bringing in from a very chaotic world make it harder for the teachers without good support to be successful. So turnover is higher in a lot of jurisdictions. And we're fortunate here in Montgomery County that our salaries are relatively competitive in the teaching field, but that is definitely a big issue for.
I'm assuming, though, that for not every field of
Like math, science, special
absolutely.
ed.
Right, so special education teacher shortages across the country, and in large part it is just not enough teachers trained, but also quite candidly, it's very demanding.
Sure.
And even in Montgomery County, we see a lot of teachers who start as special education teachers who don't leave teaching, but go into general education. And some of it is just the demands, the kind of paperwork, bureaucracy, beyond just the teaching.
You mentioned the outreach, getting these programs out there, looking at alternative paths. What kind of programs exist in Montgomery County right now to do that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So Montgomery College has 2 tracks that are available for people who want to come in, who've had other professions. In addition to focusing on, for example, that we have paraeducators now in our classrooms who've already shown the passion, they're already comfortable in the schoolhouse. What does it take to get them over the hump to go into the teaching profession and be certified as teachers if they want to? We also, because we are fortunate to have a very large, diverse student community here, are very focused on a grow your own, trying to attract high school students to think about teaching, and not only teaching, but teaching and then coming back.
It's never too early to put that seed in their
It's
minds.
never too early to put that seed out for students. I think that's really right. And I think it's also, it's important to recognize the real cost to a district when you lose teachers, the cost to bring teachers in to retrain them, because even though teachers come with certifications, every district has its own unique professional development on curriculum, on their community, and so there's a huge expense. And it's something for us to really think about, because the impact on learning, right, changes in teachers in a classroom actually negatively affects
Shirley, we've got
student
about a
learning.
minute left. I want to
Yeah.
switch topic real quick. In my neighborhood,
Yes.
at Board of Education, we see somebody with Carla Silvestre. We see her signs everywhere.
Yes.
Not a lot of other signs, but what's going on in this election time? It's
Well, it's really
exciting to
critical
see.
for people to know that in this election, and frankly in every election, but in this election there are 4 Board of Education races.
Okay.
One of them is unopposed, but in 3, every voter in the county gets to elect every member of the Board of Education. And issues like this, recruiting teachers, is in the purview of the governance of the Board of Education, so people should vote.
And come up, and I would take it that learn about those.
Learn about the candidates, see what their platforms are. You called out one of the candidates who's been talking about recruiting teachers and leaders.
Well, I
as a
don't know. I
critical
just see
piece.
these signs everywhere.
Absolutely.
I don't know what's going on. So I guess, Shirley, I want to thank you very much. One of the places where they learn about the candidates is the League of Women Voters Voters Guide. We're not going to talk so much about the Voters Guide, though we can in the context of all the services. Ralph, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be
From
here.
the League of Women Voters.
You betcha.
So tell us a little bit. We got a lot going on with this election.
There is a lot going on. This is the year of the long ballot, when Maryland elects all state officials plus most county officials.
No dog catchers, though.
No dog catchers.
I'm still waiting for that
Yeah,
one.
yeah. Just it will come. It will come.
Okay, good. Thank goodness.
We're really proud in Maryland. The League of Women Voters covers every office for every county in the entire state. If we don't publish a paper voter's guide, we make the information available on our website, vote411.org.
Okay.
So if a voter goes on the website, do you just type in your county or?
Now, if on the website you can type in your voting address,
Okay.
and it will then show you just the candidates who are going to appear on the ballot in your precinct.
And that confusion of that web of state delegates and congressional.
You don't need
seats
to
and all that.
remember what is my
Ralph has
congressional
remembered it
district.
for you.
Yes.
Thank
yes.
you, Ralph.
Our machine does. A number of local leagues do publish a voter's guide. Montgomery County's fortunate. There's 80,000 copies out there. Also, our local leagues sponsor candidate forums. We did one for Board of Education candidates, and we're conducting them all around the state for delegate,
Right.
state senator, everything else. Yeah.
So it seems like one of the biggest concerns, though, is actually getting people to turn out and vote. What does the league do to help really drive up voter turnout?
Well, the number one reason people do not vote is they don't realize what's at stake in terms of the candidates' positions. So we don't do a specific voter turnout effort, but our voter's guide, we know, increases the likelihood that people will vote.
An educated voter is a more likely voter.
Yes.
Yeah.
We compared, 2 years ago, the county gave us a grant to send the voter's guide to every newly registered voter.
Oh, that's interesting.
And we compared the turnout of that group to the same group in our adjoining counties, and Montgomery counties was significantly higher. We knew everyone had gotten a voter's guide.
So I've seen these voter guides at the Rockville Library. Where else can folks get these voter guides?
They can always ask the Montgomery, they can sign up so they don't have to take a chance on getting it at the library. We'll be passing them out at a number of metro stops. They're at county service centers as well. Most of the senior living communities have multiple copies. So,
you know, no one who lived through this most recent primary in Montgomery County can come away thinking it doesn't matter. We had some races where the vote total between the winner and the second one was so close.
District 16 and the
District
delegate
16,
race, just
exactly.
a
9
few-
votes
right,
separated.
right.
Yeah.
And so everybody's vote does count.
It does.
And it's young people who are going to, hopefully going to come out, because aren't they the, young people have traditionally been the ones who have been lagging behind,
yes,
right?
voter turnout among younger voters is significantly lower. As you move up the scale, the voter turnout is much, much higher. Yeah.
So one thing that I find is even when people know who the people are on the ballot, they're not aware of the questions that are on the ballot. Does your guide include those?
Oh, yes, we're very proud of that. We cover the ballot questions in Montgomery County. The voters will face 5 of them, 2 statewide, 3 local ballot questions to amend the county charter. And we give you the ballot language, which if you're an attorney, like some of us are,
Very important.
yes, very important profession. It's easy to understand. But the league always publishes a plain language explanation of what
Even
this
more
means.
important.
And we give you some arguments for and against.
Right.
We sit back and we think, okay, why would you vote for with this? Why would you vote against it? So you get some sense.
That is really helpful because sometimes it's hard to know how to do your own research even if you wanted to. So to have that as a starting point,
Yeah.
I think makes a huge difference.
Initial indications from around the country with early voting is that we can expect nationwide maybe the highest turnout right now in a midterm election for decades. Do you see any indication here in Maryland that we may be in for a big turnout?
The leading indicator is the number of requests for absentee ballots is way up. It's significantly higher than prior years. Also, voter registration has hit a record level in Maryland. So there's more people registering and more people asking for their ballots. So at this point, I would guess we're going to see a really heavy turnout for this election.
You have 30 seconds left. Anything you want to leave with us, or you want to put a message, look at that camera and tell people why they should come out and vote, or whatever?
Your vote matters. It determines what kind of schools your children are going to be taught in, determines whether law enforcement is fair and effective, and what our tax rates are, and what they're spent on.
Right. It is not a spectator sport. People have to get out there and vote.
Yep.
Don't complain if you don't join in and participate.
Absolutely.
Absolutely not.
Ralph, thank you. Shirley, thank you for the earlier one. We'll be right back with the second half of our program after these messages. And we're back. Diane Vu, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Good to see you, Don.
It's great to see you. Ike Leggett has spoken wonderfully about you, saying great things. And so if he says good things about you, then it must be so. You're doing great work, community partnerships. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what you do there, and really excited about the outreach within the communities that you serve to get them naturalized, voting, living out the American dream, because that's what you are. You're a dream facilitator.
Thanks, Don. I don't know if I can live up to that title. But yes, our office is tasked with working with underrepresented communities, and as you know, Montgomery County is one of the most diverse communities in the entire nation. 1/3 of our population is foreign-born. So our office works with communities to make sure that they are able to engage with government and to be at the table when policy and budget decisions are being made. And we also ensure that our government is culturally and linguistically competent to serve our communities. So
Well, I've seen a little bit in your work. It's been nice. It's not just this, but you're also working to empower folks.
Yes.
To be more. It's not a passive staying involved.
No.
It's saying, hey, even as people are coming from different cultures
Yes.
where they weren't encouraged to be so engaged.
Yes.
You're kind of like the translator
Yes, that's exactly what it is. We empower our communities, we educate them about the processes here. You have to remember a lot of our communities come from countries where they distrust government and they're war-torn.
Especially people in uniforms.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So the
So
first thing.
what kinds of things do you do?
So we have advisory groups that represent the communities. We do a lot of mentoring and leadership development. We work a lot with our nonprofit partners so that we can educate folks about the process here. The citizen advisory boards are incredibly powerful tool as well. We really want to make sure that our communities understand the process and that they are vocal.
Do you reach citizens through schools, through faith-based communities, through standing at the metro stop? How do people know that you're there?
Yes, all of the above.
Yes. We're listening to this.
Our office, I mean, we, as the liaisons, we don't provide any direct services. We spend all of our lives really out in the community. We live out of our cars. We're at nonprofit organizations. We're at the faith communities. We're at the grocery stores, rec centers. We engage and build partnerships and relationships with all stakeholders to educate folks about how to engage with our government.
You know, one of the things that just in some of the meetings I've attended is the individuals who are on these advisory boards, whether it's the African community, Asian community, on through, representing so many different organizations themselves, part of faith communities, part of the numerous community organizations of whether it's a tribal or country-based, language-based, region, community, whatever, and it's very impressive how they come back after consulting with all their different communities.
Yeah.
And they're the voice. I mean, it's really kind of exciting to see this.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the point. We don't want to be the voice for the community. We want the community to be a voice for themselves. And so a lot of that, like I mentioned, is just educating the community on how to be involved in our processes.
We're running out of.
You're building a sense of belonging in the community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now you need to talk here with this guy
Yes.
because this is what we want to talk about the League of Women Voters,
Yes.
the work you're doing.
No, that's
too.
just, you know, we're a small part of working with your office.
No, a big part of it. Yeah, a big part.
But to help people understand the peculiar, the operation of Maryland, in Maryland government and Montgomery County government.
Yes, so as a part of our citizenship initiative, we all know that.
We have about a minute left.
Yeah, I mean, we all know that becoming a citizen comes with perks, right? Like voting, qualifying for better jobs. And so we're trying
Jury
to educate.
duty.
Jury duty, yes, always fun, right? But again, being
Right,
a part of
important
that
stuff.
process,
Yeah.
right? And so we are working with the League of Women Voters and a lot of other nonprofit partners to educate our community on the benefits of becoming a citizen and why it's important. And
making sure they vote.
yes, exactly.
Can I actually jump in? I just want to know, like, if a youth wanted to get involved in something like this, knowing all the different pieces that play into that, what would your advice be to them in ways to get started?
Good question.
Yeah, we're always looking for volunteers, so they can visit our website. It's www.montgomerycountymd.gov/partnerships, and we do a lot of youth engagement through the faith communities, and we're always trying to build capacity with the next generation that's coming up.
Diane, promise me you'll come back again.
Oh yes, please. Only if you'll have me.
Well, we'll talk to the great producer, Carla Satensky,
Okay,
and about that. Thank you for this. That's
Thank
a
you.
great introduction, great overview. And talking about youth, let's talk about youth. Diana, welcome.
Thank you.
Every Mind, one of Montgomery County's most important nonprofits. Tell us a little bit about, just real quick about Every Mind, because we've had a number of folks from Every Mind, but it's not, you know, it's important to continue to remind people about the organization, and especially what you're doing with the youth.
Sure. So Every Mind is actually one of the leading mental health providers in the county, and we do a variety of different services for everything from elementary school youth all the way to our older neighbors and veterans, and through a variety of different programs. My focus is really with youth and families and counseling services, and I'm really fortunate I get to work with staff who provide services directly to students, but also adults and educators, community members on how to work with youth and how to support them. And as an agency, we really have a focus on trying to kind of pull that veil back of stigma and really get the conversation going that mental health, mental wellness impacts everybody. Everybody has mental wellness, and it impacts youth just like it impacts adults.
So Diana, in the schools, are you working directly with students, or are you working to support teachers and counselors, or both?
So we actually get to do both. We do have some school-based services where our therapists are actually in the buildings working with students on site or in our offices, but we also have the ability to run various programs. Sometimes it's individualized workshops or trainings or presentations, but we also have a really great curriculum called Youth Mental Health First Aid. Mental Health First Aid is a national curriculum. It's something that's being implemented across the nation, but Youth Mental Health First Aid is really focused on adults and support systems who are working with youth to understand what those early signs and symptoms are, and then what can we do as adults to support youth when they're struggling or when they're seeing somebody else struggle.
Wait. You're saying that not everything is just teenage angst?
No.
They'll just grow out of it? I mean, what's going on here, Diana?
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, for the most part, yes, most adolescents will go through puberty and adolescence, and they'll come out on the other side with a few bruises and bumps from middle school and high school, but you know, they'll come out on the other side as well-functioning, high-achieving adults. But adolescence is a time of turmoil and a lot of changes, so when we add mental health on top of what's already those regular everyday struggles,
Right. Well,
it gets difficult.
How do you help teachers recognize the signs, so if they're seeing it, or even let young people recognize the signs in their friends?
So things like Youth Mental Health First Aid and those types of curriculums really focus in on understanding what development looks like, and then understanding that a lot of times you're looking for changes, you're looking for something to be different, you're looking for students. They are very powerful and they have a lot of voices. They may not say it the way we would say it as an adult, but oftentimes they will also give you an insight into what's going on with them. So building relationships and talking to students, and then looking for those different pieces of what might be there. And sometimes it's just making the resources available so that youth know where they can go to get help when they need it.
So we know that in immigrant communities, there is a bigger stigma associated with mental health. What kind of specific outreach or education are you doing around that?
Sure. So we have, most of our clinicians are actually bilingual clinicians. A lot of them have actually immigrated to the U.S. or their families have immigrated to the U.S. from a variety of different locations across the world. So we're very fortunate in the fact that our staff is so diverse in themselves. Yeah, and it really does help to have that connection with families to help introduce the conversation from a standpoint of, you know, a personal connection. But it also really is a push across the entire organization to make sure that we are presenting mental wellness in a very accepting, accessible, inclusive manner, so that we can help folks understand, and we can kind of help bring in that going to see a therapist doesn't mean you're crazy. And that sometimes it's just a little bit of help. And so we kind of help people have that conversation, and we are very open to explaining what things are and helping meet people where they're at.
And do you feel, oh, sorry, go ahead.
And I was going to say, a lot of it is overcoming stigma. You know, I'm nearsighted, so I had LASIK surgery, although I now need reading glasses all the time anyway. You know, and I have chronic depression, so I'm on meds for that, but it makes me function. And you know, so whatever is the difference about you, there's usually some way to address it.
We're all different. I mean, your point is we're all different, right?
But it's really important for adults to speak out honestly about where their own struggles are, so that it helps reinforce that message.
And to make an environment where it's okay to talk about these things, where it's okay to say I'm having a bad day, or I've struggled with depression, or I struggle with anxiety, and to make that okay to have a conversation about with both peer groups, but also with those adults, because young people will look to their peer groups quite frequently, but really adults are the ones that can help connect them to the resources they need. So we do programs like screenings of the S word and the Youth Mental Health First Aid, and we participate in all kinds of awareness months to try to help introduce these conversations.
We've got about 30 seconds left, so real quick.
Just a quick question. We hear that there's higher anxiety now among youth. Do you think that's true?
I think we're seeing an increased impact of mental health on things. There's a lot of different factors playing into that. Social media is really changing the dynamic and landscape. So it's growing, and I think over time we're just going to have to keep an eye on it.
So just like Shirley talked about national leadership on teaching, and that is a profession, we need leadership about how we're all together, and behavioral and mental health issues are all of our issues. Yeah. Just like every mind.
Just like every mind.
Thank all of you for here. This has been a great discussion. Thank you for the show. Thank all of you in the viewing audience for joining us for this week's edition of Montgomery Week in Review. I'm Don Mooers, inviting you to join us next week at this very same time.